Next, we have Joe Wilusz, also a Vietnam-era veteran. And Joe, would you like to come up here? That'd be great. Oh, this guy looks pretty tough, doesn't he? I wouldn't want to mess with that.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I was a platoon leader in a truck company, Deuce and a Halves. Now, there was a lot of traditional carryover from World War II, the Army, I'm speaking of, into Vietnam. And a lot of that happened in the Transportation Corps. In the Transportation Corps, there were many African Americans, which was a holdover from World War II, when if you weren't in infantry, they put you driving a truck. And so that still happened when I was in the Army from 66 to 68. I was in Vietnam from August of 66 to September 67. And I was in the advance party, meaning that I flew over, I didn't go over on a troop ship. And the thing about that was that the ship, the USS Rose, that my company was on, they broke down in the middle of the Pacific, and it took them about 2.5 weeks to repair the engine that went out on the transport. So, your time began when you set foot in Vietnam. Okay, so I left about a month ahead of everybody else in the company because I got there a month before they did. When I arrived there, I was assigned to the transport officer in the Vung Tau Siberian Command. My company was supposed to go to Quy Nhon. When I arrived, and I never set foot north of Tan Son Nhut. Okay, never got north of Saigon. The whole time I was there, I was down in the Delta. There are 2 deltas in Vietnam, one in the north, one in the south. When you look at a map of Vietnam, it's basically an S-shaped country. It's about 1,030 miles long, and at its narrowest point, it's only 31 miles wide. It's bordered to the east by the South China Sea, from the east down to the south. The north is China. To the west is Cambodia and Laos. Further west of that is Thailand. If you can remember correctly, President Nixon announced back in April, late April of 1970, that we were in Cambodia. I saw Cambodia in February of 67. We were supporting the 4th Infantry Division, which was supplying Green Berets in Cambodia at that time. Probably the worst memory I have of my experiences in Vietnam, which only included the Delta. Okay, now the Delta, you could take an entrenching tool, throw it into the ground, dig a hole, and within a half an hour, that hole was full of water. That's where we were. We were at 0 degrees elevation. Now, that's not to say that there weren't mountains down there. There were, okay? But you had to go further north and further west to run into that. So, it would rain, the monsoon seasons for us in the south would start in May and run through late October. Probably the wettest month was September, okay, when it would rain a minimum 25 days out of 30, okay. Everything rotted. My boots rotted at the soles. Not my Aussie boots, My US-made boots did, jungle boots, but not my Aussie boots. I still have a pair of them. One of the groups that we supported a lot were the Australians. And I'm here to tell you that, in my opinion, they were the greatest group of people. They were like the American cowboy, okay, in the 1860s, 1870s, 1880s, okay? Their word was their bond. They were a little off the wall, okay? As opposed to the New Zealanders, who wouldn't say boo if they had a mouthful. That's how they responded to us, okay? The New Zealanders got along with us, but they were very standoffish, as opposed to the Aussies. Okay. Now, both of them had different tactics in terms of fighting guerrillas than we did. We, American forces, would go in with their steel pots on, covered in aqua velva, okay? Everything banging and clanging off of your steel pot, okay? The element of surprise, there wasn't one. The Aussies, you know, their hats were cloth hats, but just the way they presented themselves. 2 o'clock in the morning, they would surround a village, then they would go in, so nobody got in and nobody got out. Then, whatever the embarkation time was, they would go in and they'd cut the village into sectors and just start with each sector. Not us. We would just go in and burn. Okay, that's just the difference. It took us a long time. But one of the reasons why we were there, and it's not a hidden reason, and you don't read about it, but one of the reasons that we were there was to get counter-guerrilla experience. Okay, because we didn't have it. Okay, the British, the Aussies, the New Zealanders, they were in Malaysia right after World War II. They were experiencing guerrilla warfare. They knew what that was like. Our aqua velva encrusted troops didn't. And that's one of the reasons we were there. You don't read about that often, and it's not a major thing, but it is in terms of the culture of fighting the war. Probably the most horrific scene that I saw was in Cambodia. A 25-ton tank, command track vehicle type, had hit a command detonated landmine. And the story we heard was that it was a 200-pound bomb that had dropped further north and did not explode. It got honchoed down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and I guess when the opportunity presented itself, it got buried in the road, and they waited till the command track came by, and it was command detonated. Now, the hole in the road just destroyed the road because the road wasn't that wide. The tank was a minimum 10 feet away on its turret. The bottom, the belly of the tank was blown wide open. Nobody survived. Okay. And just to see that, the power that caused that to happen still is fresh in my mind. And like I said, to me, it was one of the tragedies that I saw. Now, we would bring troops in our deuce and a halves and take body bags out. Those that were wounded were flown out. And I'm not saying that too bad for us. No, because they were within 18 minutes of some kind of military hospitalization. Okay, and so that's terrific. Okay, unfortunately, many had to survive that. 58,000 didn't. But anyway, there are many stories. Not war stories, but war experience related stories. Silesium. SOLATIUN. That's a word used to describe the payment to a local national that we were responsible for ending their life. And so that's what we paid the family for killing that Vietnamese. We were going through a village one day, and typically when we did, the little kids would come out along the side of the road, and they were begging for candy, for cigarettes, for whatever we'd throw at them. Okay. This one little girl, she couldn't have been 5. She was, I don't know if she stumbled, if she fell in, if she was pushed, whatever. She fell in front of one of our deuce and a halves that was carrying a Conex container. And by the time the driver was able to hit the brakes and stop the forward motion from the Conex container in the back of the truck, ran over her and killed her. 2 days later, I had to go back and pay the father $63 salation fee. That's the way it was. We were to employ as many Vietnamese nationals as we could to get money into the economy. That was one of the rules, not a rule, but that was one of the goals that the military had. And so we employed a lot of Vietnamese women. And basically, they were housekeepers. Okay. They would wash our clothes, they would clean the barracks, they would do those housekeeping types of things, shine our shoes, whatever. The main company got into country at the end of September of '66. Before Thanksgiving of '66, all of the silverware in the mess hall was gone. The only thing we didn't do was body cavity searches. Everything else was checked. Everything else was cleared. But we had no silverware come Thanksgiving. We had to use the silverware in our mess kits because the supplies in the mess hall were gone. Okay. We brought ashore the 196th Infantry Division, the 198th Infantry, Light Infantry Division. I said division, that's not right. Light Infantry Brigades and the 199th Light Infantry Brigade. Okay. Then after them came the 9th Infantry Division. When I got in country, I was part of 150 to 180,000 troops in the country. Okay. After Thanksgiving is when the buildup began, okay, and it advanced pretty rapidly to up over 200,000 people. There was a lot of, the term was called ticket punching for the career military who had worked a lot at the Pentagon, had these safe jobs, okay? They came to Vietnam to get their ticket punched. Yeah, I've been there. Okay, what's my next move? Where do I go? What do I do? That kind of thing. I'm not saying that they weren't dedicated. They were. But there were a lot of bureaucratic decisions that were made that impacted operations. Okay. I'm glad that I wasn't in the areas like Saigon where the bureaucracy was choking. You just couldn't do anything unless it was approved, that kind of thing, which included firing around. Okay, one of the kids in my truck platoon fired a weapon coming back from a supply operation. There was an overhead UN helicopter that started an investigation, and it took 3 months to conclude, and the paperwork on that investigation was that thick, honestly. that's what we had to put up with. Was it right, was it wrong? I don't know, I can't say, okay? All I know is that the soldier, the truck driver, the assistant truck driver, who fired his weapon, claimed that it was an accidental discharge and it wasn't done on purpose. Was he shooting at a UN helicopter? I can't tell you, I don't know. But that's some of the stuff that we had to put up with because of, it's not because of, but Army rules and regulations, even in that scenario. Okay. Like I said, the Aussies were a great bunch of people. They did a lot for us. We supplied them a lot. One of the artillery groups that moved in near them, into the Delta that we moved in, I forgot what their unit designation was. The third night they were in country, they got hit by the VC and the People's Army of Vietnam, which is an offshoot of the Vietnamese. And when we got there the next morning bringing supplies in, there were a lot of dead bodies around. But they were, their armament was 105 millimeter guns. And they used rounds. They lowered their guns to 0 elevation, and they were firing these anti-personnel rounds. Each round had 8,000 what they called flechettes in them. And basically what they were is an inch-long rocket. It had a head, and it had fins on the back. And these flechettes were designed to eliminate whatever was in front of them. It shredded them, okay? And that's what they did, okay? One of the things that happened to us, we were in country, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks. We got hit one night in camp. Next morning, we found a company barber on the wire. That's just the way it was. Okay, I guess I'm going over here. Are there any questions? Okay, very good. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.